Thanks a lot, Flo, for the very kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this panel on payments and the future of digital payments in an area of groundbreaking innovation. The way that we transact, that we connect, that we create values has undergone a very different shift, a systemic shift. Digital payments are no longer just about convenience. They are just the backbone of truly interconnected global economy. I'm very pleased and honored, first, to be here. Thanks a lot for having me, and to welcome exceptional industry leaders who are not only shaping the transformation, but also changing the landscape for payments. And to start with, what I'd love to do is to ask them a question, and as an introduction and an opening remark. And I'll start with you, Marwan. What do you think is the most significant factor driving the transformation of digital payments today? Introduce your role and, of course, your company contributing to this change. And welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marwan Nader. I'm a director at PayerMax. PayerMax is a global payment provider headquartered in Singapore, with a big focus on APAC region and more recently on the MENA region. Hence, we are here in UAE. We have a license from ADGM, and you also cover multiple countries in the MENA region. So back to the question about the factors shaping digital transformation, digital adoption of payments and the new trends. So I look at it from a demand and supply and enabler point of view. So the demand is picking up. Everything is becoming digital, especially after the pandemic. Digital payments became like a normal thing to do. We all shop online, especially with the young generations, the millennials and Gen Z that are basically digital savvy and native. And transacting online became very normal thing to do. That really fueled all the growth in that field. From a supply point of view, all the technology availability and the speed and the new innovation for payments when it comes to either traditional payments or the more advanced technology that we will speak about later, I think that also fuels this whole growth in digital payments. And of course, the environment, which is the enabler when it comes to regulation, for example, here in the UAE, and the overall adoption of everything digital in our world, I think is also fueling and will only expand and grow in the future.
Thanks a lot, Marwan. Arsen Israpilov, if you'd like to share your views as well, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Marwan. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Arsen. I work for Google. My role is a sector lead. So formally, I'm in sales, more related in the ads. My actual job is like we consulting global, international, mostly technology companies in terms of the marketing and the business development. So I will be the one giving more general answers today because I can't say about myself and an expert is the digital payments. So I will, in terms of how Google is helping to develop the digital payments, I will say about three things. Number one is ecosystem regarding the Google Pay and the Google Wallet in terms of the creating of the frictionless payments ecosystem for the e-commerce. As the second point, I would say the infrastructure, both from the developing mobile apps, Google Cloud, and a lot of the technologies that are required in order to be as enabler for the digital payments, whether it will be just in general sense for the fintech or in the finance. And the third point is, of course, that there are almost like no Googlers are not talking about the AI. So I will say the automation, because if we will look at it from the perspective of the experience in regards to the digital payments, the automation plays one of the key roles, especially these days. If we will not be looking at what Jerome will be telling us regarding the modern ways of the payment, but in terms of the general experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Arsen. And Jérôme Fauré, if you could introduce yourself and give your views. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. I'm the CEO at Immersive. We're a global partner of MasterCard's. We enable Web3 companies to issue their own branded Web3 MasterCard product. I think there's three things that are going to impact payments in the short to medium term: digital identity, digital currency, and digital payments. At the moment, we're going through a kind of Nokia Kodak moment. Payments haven't fundamentally changed in, oh goodness, 70 years. So Visa kind of started out in 1956. It was a card number, it was an expiry date, it was an amount. In the early 70s, they digitized it so you could do it electronically, similar to how you could do a phone call electronically also in the 70s and 80s. Now we're going to see this transition to apps, APIs, data. Point of sale systems are going to become the epicenter for digital payments. Money's going to evolve. It's going to become smart. It's going to know where it is, where it's been, where it's allowed to go. And with decentralized ledger technology, digital identity, shared credentials, is going to really open up innovation and enable a whole bunch of really cool things to happen that haven't been possible before.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So we'll go much deeper now on digital payment innovation. And I'll start with you, Jérôme, but of course, this question is to everyone. With what we're seeing with the rapid advancements of digital payments, with cash to digital money, CBDCs, tokenized deposits, stablecoins, what do you think these innovations are complementing or disrupting existing payment system? And I'll start by you, Jérôme, if you can share your views.
I think on the complementary side, you've got global infrastructure, particularly from Visa and MasterCard, that makes it easy to build a global business without having to onboard, millions of merchants or places to spend. So you've got the distribution in place. The innovation is very much happening on the consumer side. Initially, you had apps like Revolut, I guess, that were building consumer experiences. Now with this blockchain technology, you've got these ecosystems, these new innovations, these new Web3 wallets, these DeFi protocols, these digital currencies, these stable coins. They're increasingly becoming more regulated, more adopted, and people are looking to ways in which they can earn digital currency, get value from that. So it might be a loan against their crypto, it might be a yield, and they want to spend it. And all of these things are happening on this open global infrastructure with a massive amount of investment, unprecedented investment from VCs and other parties in the place.
No, thanks a lot. And Marwan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anything to do on the blockchain and digital assets will be a big innovation in the future. I will speak maybe a bit more traditional innovations, such as, the embedded finance. I mean, we've seen it everywhere, embedded payments, embedded lending with the likes of BNPL. I mean, UAE and the region. So, a big adoption for buy now, pay later with the likes of Tabi and Tamara. So this became this, frictionless, seamless user journey where you can get access to a microloan or to a credit. Same thing with insurance. Now we're seeing a lot of insurance kind of products being embedded without you even thinking about it. If you go on Amazon, if you go, to buy any furniture, the insurance is already embedded with it. And it can even become more, deep in terms of innovation and kind of connectivity with tomorrow when we have Internet of Things and the IoT payments, what we call kind of the invisible payments. For example, when your car will automatically pay for its toll, gate charge, or it will renew its insurance automatically. So I think these are type of innovation that we will become. And payments, as Jérôme also mentioned, moved from, a cost item on the P&L of corporates to an innovation and a way of differentiation for customers and for the merchant as well.
Thanks a lot. I'd like to move the question now to Arsene and talk about security, risk, and trust. So, of course, security remains a top concern in digital payments. What do you think the innovative approaches or technologies are being used to mitigate this risk and ensure consumer trust in digital payment system?
Thank you. So let me get to this from two perspectives. I love, Marwan, what you said regarding the invisible payments, because imagine, I'll start to thinking from the B2C perspective. Imagine like we're all using like platforms, and there are well-known brands where we're making payments. So from that perspective, it's like a shared responsibility. So if I buying something from Amazon, I do trust to Amazon. So from that perspective, I'm not expecting any kind of a scams or issues, which is posing two requirements for the Amazon as well as for the payments provider, which is, again, we're talking about the trust. The second aspect, I would say, is very interesting because this is more of a evolutional. Whenever we make payments on the big platforms or any kind of other services, some of the invisible payments. And then there was a research which was done with my team, and they were looking in terms of the well-known, most searched financial institutions during the year. And in top 30, there was like a 25 were well-known banks, while fintechs were only 5 or like 3. So from that perspective, in terms of the trust, the users still trust more to the banks. You can easily get the numbers that in terms of the number of the accounts, fintechs are showing an amazing progress. But if we will look in terms of the deposits, where the actually users risking with their hard-earned money, you will see that they still trust the banks. So from that perspective, this is the key aspect of the trust from the consumer's perspective, which is posing a lot of the requirements in terms of the user experience and in terms of the security for the actual companies that are providing those payments. This, I would say, like two key aspects.
Thanks a lot. I want to move into now, we talk about trust, I want to move to the regulation part. Regulation part, of course, you know, Abu Dhabi positioned itself as a big fintech hub, and thanks a lot to this progressive regulatory environment. From your perspective, and I'll start with you, Marwan, because you've been, you know, established yourself, you set it up in Singapore first for Asia. You've been, you know, scaling in also different parts of Asia, China, etc. And then a couple of years ago, established yourself in the UAE. So could you please let us know how Abu Dhabi's regulatory framework make it attractive for innovation, and how do these regulation balance between fostering growth while, you know, ensuring compliance and consumer protection?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as you rightly mentioned, so PayerMax was established in Asia, headquartered in Singapore, and in 2022 moved to the Middle East. Firstly established in the UAE, more specifically in ADGM. And from here, kind of, we expanded a bit into Saudi and to Turkey and Egypt and the wider MENA region. So Abu Dhabi specifically and you know, UAE in general has been very proactive in terms of regulation and providing startup-friendly frameworks and sandboxes, basically, to help them test and basically grow and scale their products before launching. More also like the access to capital. Abu Dhabi as the capital of the UAE, the access to angel investors and VCs that are available within Hub71 and other institutions and bodies also provide you know, tools. And money is the, you know, most critical tool for any startup basically to grow. So having access to investor networks and capital is crucial, and ADGM provides that seamlessly. And also from a regulation point of view and from an environment point of view, when it comes to the law, for example, it's based on the English common law, which is, you know, a worldwide standard. The fact that, you know, the ownership can be 100% for the founder, profit repatriation laws is friendly, tax regimes are very friendly. So all of these factors basically makes it a very attractive place basically to establish business for the region, for UAE first, and for the wider region as well.
No, thanks a lot. It's really, really interesting. Jérôme, so you also a company who you started, so you based in New Zealand, but it was in the UK, Ireland, Sydney, Mexico, Brazil. What's UAE and what's Abu Dhabi is very different, and could you share about your journey about implementation of your company, but with the regulation?
Yeah, so we're a regulated entity. I deal with multiple regulators all around the world. I think the difference is if you look at traditional regulators, as you would look at a traditional mechanic. And if you look at digital assets, like someone that looks after a mechanic looks after a Tesla or an EV. The difference between traditional regulators is the equivalent of taking your Tesla to a traditional mechanic. They're going to open up the bonnet and see that there's no motor there and be very confused. Over here, we have ADGM, and my first experience with ADGM was something I haven't come across before. Normally, we produce these 1,000-page documents that tick a lot of boxes that probably the people reading them don't understand, if I was to be fair. And in this instance, the first response we got back from Brian at ADGM was, does your protocol support ERC 4337? If not, do you plan to, because it provides a better user experience? Now, that's a Tesla mechanic understanding a Tesla car. Oh, excuse me. Massive difference. And they try and understand you as a person and as a business. They have their monthly meetups, and they want to understand you as a human. They want to understand your team, your thinking. You have whiteboard sessions with them. And it is very different. They want to support you and enable you to succeed in this market. So, yeah, I would say ADGM is the most progressive regulator we've come across, the easiest to engage with, the most open, the most transparent. Sorry, I'm not sure what's going on with the mic either, by the way.
It's working. It's working. We can hear you. Yes, no, we hear you. So very progressive regulator, enabling, a lot of allowing also partnership. And I'd love to talk about now the ecosystem synergy between tech, between fintech, payments, banks. How does it really work? Could you share with us perhaps, your example, like real case studies of successful, but perhaps challenges as well that you face when it comes to bank, corporate, fintech, payments, collaboration? Perhaps Marwan, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So before joining PayerMax, I was part of Al-Futtaim Group, working within their payments service arm, and that was around 2020, just around 2021. And BNPL was still, new in the region. And Tabi, which we all maybe know here, was a very small startup trying to get a big name or corporate basically to accept to add it to their checkout. So at that stage, Al-Futtaim as a big group and conglomerate in UAE basically gave it the trust to test and to pilot the BNPL product with 2 websites. And the results were astonishing. And then slowly, more brands within the group started adopting this, new technology. Today, when you talk about BNPL, it's like, yeah, definitely, all the websites should have BNPL in the region. But at that stage, there was a lot of push internally from the group saying, what is BNPL? It's not gonna work. It's a small company. Why would we trust it? What if it fails? All of these questions and concerns basically were justified at that stage. But with the right governance, with the right implementation, when you do pilots, when you have a trust relationship between the corporate and the fintech, things grow to become a success story. And Al-Futtaim was actually the first big account for Tabi, which also allowed it to land other big groups, eventually Majid Al-Futtaim and all the other family offices in the UAE. So I think it started with an initial meeting and a trust, and definitely a good product and a good team at their end. So but if we didn't open the door at that stage, things would have maybe been different. So that's one example.
Very, very good example indeed. Collaboration between startup and established corporate or government is often seen as a driver of innovation. And I'll ask you, Jérôme, about sharing some successful partnership that have accelerated progress in digital payments and in your field, with what you are doing with Web3 and the wallets, and what lesson can others learn from these collaborations?
For us, it was very much been part of Hub71. One of our VCs actually completed the application form I didn't get round to it previously, and he's, Jerome, you need to be in the UAE. This is, well, he didn't say it's the capital of capital, but kind of along those lines. And on the back of that, we've had massive success engaging, obviously, with the regulator, ADGM. We've spoken to multiple banks here that are actually looking to collaborate with startups, acknowledging that innovation is something that's really difficult to do in large corporate environments. And they realise that now in UAE with 30% adoption of crypto, that maybe banks need to have a product that is relevant to consumers. And to be relevant to consumers now, that does include crypto. And so all of these things have happened for us on the back of being part of Hub71. So there's an example.
No, thanks a lot. Yes, very remarkable work from Hub71, enabling a lot of the partnership, facilitating collaboration. It's really good to have them to foster and provide, more fintech and corporate partnership. I'd like to talk about scaling now. Scaling, the scaling part. What have we learned about, the lesson learned from scaling? And perhaps, Jérôme, I'll start with you, and then after that, Marwan, and of course, Arsene. But the Web3 and decentralized finance are gaining traction. What do you see are the biggest challenges in scaling this technology to mainstream adoption?
For Web3 in particular, the biggest issue is the user experience and regulation. Often these two things are in conflict with each other. A lot of crypto native people don't want to do KYC. They don't want to know where their transactions are, where they're coming from, all this type of thing. So when you're trying to bridge Web3 with traditional finance, which is what you need to get mass, large-scale adoption, you need to do a couple of things that are challenging. One is you need to bridge this unregulated Web3 world with this regulated Web2 traditional world. And the next thing you need to do is have this really elegant user experience, which up until recently, Web3, I would say, has been more for tech natives than it has been for my mum or dad. So I think those are some of the challenges that we're starting to address.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in Web3, so I will speak about traditional payments. I think one of the lessons was that, you need to adapt to each local market because every local market is different, even within the same region. So PayerMax basically came with an Asian identity where, payment methods in Asia are very different, even within, each part of Asia. Take China, for example, you have WeChat, Alipay. Yes, you have cards, but it's mostly wallets. Singapore, Indonesia, they have their own payment methods. MENA was very different. But initially, if you don't live in MENA, you haven't transacted in MENA, you think it's like, one-stop shop, like copy and paste. Actually, it's very different. Even within MENA, if you look, for example, between UAE, KSA, Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, very different landscape, very different user behavior, very different regulation, very different expectations from users. So as a payment provider for our merchants, which are mostly global merchants, coming to a region, they don't necessarily know the nuances or the differences between each country, between the regulation and what users want to use. Like if you want to do a payout to the user, what do they prefer? Do they prefer cash? Do they prefer bank transfer? Do they prefer wallet transfer? The answer is very different in UAE versus Egypt. Egypt is big on cash. People want cash. They go and they withdraw their transfer. Or they even pay with cash. So, they pay online, they have a code, and then they walk to a store nearby and they make the payment with cash. It's very different than in UAE. So if you do not adopt and you don't play this advisory role to the merchant, then, they might miss on some major payment methods. For example, if they disregard cash in Egypt, or if they disregard digital payments or digital wallets in Africa, then they will miss a big chunk of their collection potential from the users. So the need to adapt to the local market is key. And partnerships, I think, is also very crucial. Having a win-win partnership between the service provider, the merchant, but also the customer. So we need to keep the customer experience in mind, because sometimes you can have a bilateral deal with a service provider, but then the use case is not user-friendly. So people will not adopt it. So it's not enough just to have a good deal with a good profit-sharing ratio between, a payment provider and an acquirer. If, for example, the payment method that they are enabling, people are not interested in, or they will not adopt it. So having this, win-win-win and trust, as Arsen mentioned previously, this is key in scaling and building this partnership and expand it, across regions or within countries in same region. So we have partners where we started, for example, with one country, but partners who have multiple, footprint in different countries. Because we established trust, let's say, in UAE, we could expand it, or we did expand it, for example, to Qatar, to Kuwait, to KSA. So these are, some of the lessons that we learned.
No, thanks a lot. You want to?
I just want to add, because while Jerome and Marwa was speaking, I was splitting in my mind this into two parts. One is the evolutionary, because whenever we're talking about the existing payment ecosystem and the user experience, to me, it sounds like a evolutional way of automation or making the experience better, building trust and all that stuff, which is, there is still a component of the regulation, but it comes by design. And then there is the revolutionary way in terms of the new digital payments, new currencies, something innovative, where the value or the weight of the regulation is heavier, I would say, which is more like a policy related. And then if you can imagine, for the startup, if you will not talking about the corporate, but we'll talk about the startup, then it is a very big overhead, because you need to build you need to have a compliance team for each and every market. And then I was just wondering if it will be a very interesting opportunity for IGGM and Hub71. Hub71 and IGGM, they are doing an amazing job here in the UAE. But maybe the next challenge should be come up with something from the regulatory perspective for the whole GCC area, which is then will make a lot life easier for the startups from the overhead perspective, and then even from the innovation perspective. That might be something interesting. Thanks.
No, thanks a lot. My last question, but perhaps the most important one, is the future trends in payment. So we have you on stage, and I really want for you to discuss with us. We know there's the decline of cash will continue, and instant payment will continue to displace other payment methods. Real-time payments have now been established in almost every major market. We're seeing with case studies in Brazil, in India, and also the EU, who has boosted adoption of real-time payments. What's your view? What's, going to be the key innovation and emerging trends, and what will make you busy for the next 5 years? So I'll start with you, perhaps, Arsen, to give your views on the trends.
Well, again, I will give you my very general answer, because whenever we're talking about the future, we should be talking about the generation, about the next people. Let's talk about the Gen Z. Do they have that heavy history of thinking about fiat or not fiat, digital payments or something like this? Does it matter for them? Will they think about it, or they will be more thinking about it from the perspective of their own experience, because I was mentioning the example in terms of the number of the accounts for the fintech companies, which are rising and very big, while you can easily will see that most of the deposits are not with the Gen Z. They're not depositing a lot. So from that perspective, does it matter for them? I'm not trying to answer the question in terms of do we need the digital currencies? Yeah, definitely. There will be a lot of the innovation in a revolutionary way. But in terms of the user experience, I think it's we need to think in abstract terms in terms of what is actually the payments. If you're not looking at the layer of where is it something crypto, blockchain related, or is there any movement of the money? Will it make sense for those generations that will be using it? Will they think about it where it's coming from? I'm not sure. In terms of the last point will be is that, especially from the generation's perspective, there will be a lot more demanding than us.
I'm pretty sure that there is like a lot of, like a very big cohort of the people, if they will see the screen where they need to enter the number of their card, they will refuse it. They will not buying anything. They will just go to the platform where it will be like just one click and that's it. So this is more like a kind of a, underlying layer will be revolutionizing, but the front facing for the user layer, it will be more from the evolutionary perspective, the frictionless, the easy of use, etc., etc. Thank you.
Yeah, I will leave the digital assets part for Jerome, although I believe it's the future. The digital money is eventually coming to us. I will speak about more, the traditional, also financial payments. For example, cheaper cross-border payments, faster cross-border payments will be actually it's a need and will become a bit more normal in the future with the use of, maybe stable coins or other technologies. That will be one key one. So having, a much easier way to send money, whether it's a P2P, whether it's B2C, whether it's, C2B also, if we think about open banking, account-to-account transfers. As I mentioned earlier, embedded finance, I think it will become more part of our daily life. We will stop thinking much about payments. Maybe your Alexa or your Yasmina will do the groceries for you. So all of these kind of new trends will become more and more mainstream as we grow. And CBDCs also is actually gonna become have more use cases, probably on the B2B side before the retail side for large transactions. And UAE has been, testing multiple projects with the Mbridge project with, some Southeast Asian and with Saudi Arabia to do some pilots on the CBDC projects. So a lot of exciting times to come. So we need to be ready to, adopt these new technologies and make the most out of it.
Jérôme, you have the last words, but I think an important one about, what's your view? What's going to be, defining the next decade of digital payments?
Look, we're going to see more innovation in the next 10 years than the last 1,000 where it comes to payments. And as I mentioned before, will be driven by three fundamental pillars: digital identity, digital currency, and digital payments. And I'll talk a little bit about each. So around digital identity, in the world today, FATF, the governing body for compliance, estimate that we spend $100 in compliance activity, fintechs, banks or similar, to save $1 of nefarious activity. So not a very good ROI. So from a digital identity perspective, what we're going to start seeing is we're going to be able to get codified compliance. So only two people that have been KYC'd, without necessarily having to share their details with each other, can send more than $10,000. Only currency where we know the source of funds, and only networks. And so you're going to have codified compliance in the network. I think that's going to drive a lot of innovation. And I think innovation at a global sort of scale. At the moment, you have local banks, local regulators, local standards. This type of innovation is going to make payments more global, more open. You'll be able to send money at the same speed of sending an email and with the same, if not higher compliance than what we get today from traditional payments. On the digital currency front, I think smart money, as I mentioned, programmable money that knows where it is, where it's been, where it's allowed to go. Maybe as philanthropic people may want to just have codified money that can only be used for good, that type of thing. And then I think on digital payments, we're going through this Kodak Nokia moment. We're going to go from analog to digital. Payments at the moment are like a phone call in the 80s or 90s, but they're going to transition to apps, API, data. That's going to enable personalized payments, personalized rewards, personalized experience at a level that's been unprecedented before. That AI, our little bot man, bot girl, integrated with a point of sale, integrated with our calendar, is going to make decisions for us, recommendations for us. A whole bunch of really exciting things going to happen on the back of these three pillars.
And we didn't mention the word AI yet. Yeah.
or metaverse, the other one.
So definitely AI. I mean, at least I see two major use cases where AI can improve digital payments. One on the fraud prevention, and fraud monitoring, because it will be able to crunch so many sources of data and come up with real-time kind of answers on, screening, sanction list checking, and even data and analytics to come up with, trends that kind of before the card is transacting and it moves to, a dispute or fraud or a chargeback, kind of avoid this whole thing by being smarter. And also when it comes to personalized offering. So the more data AI can generate, consume, it will generate very hyper-personalized experience for the users, whether it's in payments or in any different types. So I think hyper-personalization will become eventually something normal in the next few years with the help of AI.
No, thank you so much. I think we see the future. Really, really insightful knowledge that you shared, and it was a great pleasure listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.